Thank you very much, Daniel. Am I loud and clear? All right, good. Thank you for the flattering, Daniel. That is very nice of you. I am standing very humbly in front of you, and I'm very happy that you guys have taken the time to come listen to me. Before I continue, I do have a question for you guys, because I need to know, because I'm very curious, what kind of people I have in front of me. So I have a very simple question for you, an A and B, so you can get out your phone, go to, I think it's the poll, right? Go to the poll, and then the question is, in order to kickstart your future, which is, of course, exactly why you are here, would you rather reach for the stars and miss, or would you rather reach low and hit? So you can fill that in. Now, that's completely personal. It doesn't matter what answer you give. So most of you would rather reach for the stars and miss. 70-30. I'm guessing only 10 people filled it in. What do we got here? All right, 69. Good number. All right, 31, 30. All right, good. So most of you would rather reach for the stars and miss, and some of you would rather reach low and hit. I think that's very understandable, because if you look at hitting and missing, then obviously to be successful, whatever that is, we'll find out, I hope, is very vague. So I went to Canada, to Toronto, to visit my best friend, who is also my co-founder, and he'll come back in the story. And I went to this exhibition of Michelangelo, right? So this is the creation of Adam, and it's in the Sistine Chapel. And what Michelangelo said, and Michelangelo is one of the greatest artists who ever lived, who absolutely surpassed being human, right? And he said that the danger for most of us is not that we aim too high and miss it, but rather that we aim too low and reach it, right? And that's exactly what I will talk about, because this is a very challenging quote. But before I continue on this quote and on this idea, I think it's relevant I tell something about myself. So my name is David, and I know what you guys are thinking. David has a huge family. David does have a huge family. That is not this family. These are... take it easy, guys. David does have a huge family, but that's not this family. These are some of the children I worked with in Indonesia. So I was born here in the Netherlands. I moved to England, lived in England for 4 years, and moved back. So most of my life I grew up in the Netherlands. But my family originally, as you might have guessed, is from somewhere else, and they're from Indonesia. So I went back 2 or 3 years ago. And I went back to work there, to learn the language and learn the culture. So I was there for, I think, 7 months, and I worked at 3 different companies. So one of the companies I worked at was a teaching and education organization that was aimed at educating poor children in Jakarta. That's where my family is from. So the first day I arrived, I said, you know, guys, I'm from the Netherlands. I can teach. What can I do for you guys? So obviously they made me teach. So they put me in front of a class which was only as big as this. And they said, teach these children that were 6 to 8, teach them how to count to 10 and how to introduce themselves. So I did that. And sure enough, all of these children did it flawlessly. I mean, they could count to 10 in a very British accent, and that was not a British accent, but they could do that. They could do that. And they could introduce themselves very well as well. So I said, guys, how is this possible? Have you guys done this before? And they said, yes, we've done this 20 times over. Every single time there's a new international student or whatever, we learn this. And that got me really angry. I mean, it got me so frustrated deep down inside that all this resource, all this energy that was put in by all the people that went to work for that organization was wasted, right? And that stuck with me for a very long time. So I went back to Amsterdam. I went continuing studying, doing philosophy and tax economics, and tax economics is just as fun as it sounds. But I also went to teach at the University of Amsterdam. So I went to teach first year's economics and business students. And that was fun, that was really interesting. But at one point I Skyped with the same friend who was living in Canada, who was now in Russia, a very international dude. His name is Diederik. And we were talking about creating something for ourselves. So instead of looking at the world and trying to find a problem and create a problem, what we thought we should do is look at which problems already existed. So which big challenges the world faced. And based on those problems, we would try to find a solution. That's how we thought about that's how we started thinking about when starting a business, right? So before I continue with what we did after that, which was a lot of failures, but the question, I won't use the interactive student talks thing if that's okay with you, but what percentage of refugees, right, newcomers that arrived in the Netherlands after 2013 are on social support? Well, you could have filled in whatever, but the answer is 75%. And that is, in all these people, that's about, I think, if I look at the room, 60 to 70 people out of 80 And keep in mind that these individuals, right, that's what they are, individuals, they come from good education. They have had really responsible jobs. They went to school. They were lawyers. They were doctors. They had their own businesses. And here they were nobody, right? So this was one of the challenges we thought we should find a solution for. And what we started doing was we actually wanted to create a brand. We wanted to create a t-shirt brand, a clothing brand that would show the world their courage and their motivation, their creativity and their skills. And part of the profits, we thought, would go to this platform, this organization that would invest in their own enterprises, right? Newcomer enterprises. You know what happened? There was no such platform. So then, of course, the t-shirt brand wasn't a really good idea. So we thought, let's take a step back and create that platform. Right? So we wanted to do a crowdfunding platform where we would use all our resources in the Netherlands, our network, to create the opportunities that we had, right? And we would let people post, people from all over the Netherlands post their projects so that people, both corporate and private, could invest in these enterprises of refugees. So what happened next was we looked for projects to put on the website, but there were not many projects. There weren't a substantial amount of projects. And when we really dived into the actual problem, what we found is that given all the knowledge and all the skills they had, it was really hard for these individuals, for these people, to find a connection and doing that again in the Netherlands. It had to do with the network. Obviously, it had to do with the network, not knowing where to start with competition or partners. But it also had to do with not having good capital and also not knowing the legal system, the tax system, which is, as I said, just as interesting as it sounds, but also the Dutch language, the Dutch culture. What does the Dutch consumer, what does he want? And I think all of you, I see a lot of international students. I hear a lot of international students. I think you can relate that if you're forced out of a country, if you're in a new country, there are these small differences that make it really hard to start. And so I was in Jordan, I think 3 months ago. One of my best friends has started a company there called Greening the Camps, and I went there to visit, and obviously I worked within his company because that was amazing to see what he had built. But we also took a trip down south. And do you guys know when the bus in Jordan, do you know when it leaves? The bus in Jordan leaves when it's full. It doesn't leave at 3. It doesn't leave at 5. The bus leaves when it's full and not earlier and no later. And I think that's very different from the buses here in the Netherlands. And these small things that define how the culture and the country works are interesting where you're on a holiday, but they are crucial if you want to start a business, right? And I have this in Indonesia. So a lot of Asia, let's say Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, the way they communicate also in business is they talk like this. Or sometimes they would communicate like this. Now and again, they would communicate like this. But I, however, as a real Dutchman, I always communicate like this. So the first 3 months of my time in Indonesia, I had a really, really bad time with management. And I mean, they hated my guts. I was very impolite, and that was my fault, right? I should have adjusted to that culture, but that was my fault. So what we then decided to do, if we looked at the real challenges that a lot of people faced, is we wanted to strive for the economic empowerment of newcomers in the Netherlands by helping them launch, fund, and grow their own entrepreneurial projects. And I think what we do, our entrepreneurship modules are based around this golden triangle, which I know it's gray, but that's because of the yellow in the background. In our minds, it's very, very much golden, where a newcomer works together with business professional or entrepreneur and students that are students just like you, right? So just to do a little bit of marketing, in February we have another startup weekend with 20 students, 20 newcomers, and you are welcome to join. But what we see is that by working together with people who actually live here, those obstacles of understanding the culture, understanding the market in Holland, is very well understandable when you have a student who works together with an entrepreneur, right? And the business professional then shows some strategic guidance. And what I think is relevant is that for all 3 of these people who are their own individuals with their own stories, I mean, all of them learn by working together, and they learn by doing. And I think what is especially amazing, if you look at the students like yourselves, that all the energy, which I see is slowly flowing away, is put into these projects, and all that energy shows a lot of output in the projects that we support. Mustafa is one of the people we worked with who was at one of our startup weekends, and one of the mentors recognized his creativity and his passion and offered him a really good job. And I think if you look at our mission, economic empowerment, it is very important that he really did take that job. And he said to us that he learned so much in such a great way. But the reason I'm standing here, and the reason I hope I can help you, either if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this right now, is that there's a very clear lesson that I learned. So what I usually hear when I tell people that I work with newcomers and help them to start their businesses or support them, then people say, "How good of you," right? That's so good, and that's so much, sounds so noble. Well, they usually don't say noble, but they say good. How good of you. But keep in mind that that was not the reason why we started, right? Diederik and I, we wanted to build something for ourselves, and we thought that the best way to do that was look at the real problems that existed and try to find solutions. And I think it's really good if you have a good heart and a high moral spirit to do something good for the world, but it's not necessary. So what I think is it all has to do with this, right? Would you rather reach for the stars and miss, or would you rather reach low and grasp it, right? It's all about the stars and the low. I think because I framed this question in a very narrow way that the choice is very easy. Of course you want to aim for the stars. Otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this talk. I think you want to aim for the stars. And I think, if I look at the work we do, and the challenges that we face, I mean, we as a society have all these huge problems. We have unemployment, malnourishment, we have water scarcity, conflict in the Middle East. I mean, there's, women's rights are terrible in some countries, and also the climate change is something which is very relevant up until this day. I think tackling these problems as an individual, right, trying to create a sustainable social impact is the hardest challenge of all. Sustainable means earning money, by the way, right? That is absolutely the hardest challenge that exists in the entire world, tackling those problems. And I think that is exactly the reason why you should take them on. If you look at all the things you could do, right, the moment you walk out of this door, what do you want to invest in if you really want to kickstart your future? Do you want to invest in money? Do you want to invest in your resume? Do you want to invest in other people? Because I think if it's very clear that you want to do something for your future, that you should invest in you. And if you want to invest in you, there is only one really big thing you can do, and that is taking on the hardest challenges that exist. I'll tell you why. These challenges, the challenge that we as a society face, they are these big, huge, complex social problems, right? Really abstract, but they require concrete solutions, right? Without concrete solutions, nothing is happening. And to challenge yourself to try that, to make the best use out of your brain, your social skills, your network, I think is extremely valuable as a person, right? Not necessarily for a career, but for you as a person. Second of all, everybody is trying to solve these problems, right? We're talking about big NGOs, we're talking about politicians, even if they are sometimes corrupted through the system. A lot of people, if not everyone, is trying to solve it. You try. You try to solve these problems. You will challenge yourself to become absolutely the best version in every possible way. And I think if you look at what your position is right now, I mean, barring maybe grandma who is there in the back, you as students, the sweet lady in the back, if you're looking at the position you're in right now, right, as a student, without a loan, without a wife, without children, I truly believe that you have, and that was our idea, you have nothing to lose and you have everything to win. If you look at, the choice you can make right now is very simple. I'll try to make it as concrete as possible. Pick a problem. Pick a social problem, and I can give you the list after this, and try to solve it. And you can try to solve it alone. You can try to solve it with a friend. You can try to solve it by working at a company who is trying to solve that problem, but try to solve it. And don't try to solve it today. Don't try to solve it tomorrow. Try to solve it yesterday. I think if you look at what I get to do, and I know in the previous talks there was a bit of a confusion about what success means and what you should do with your career. My career path was very simple laid out for me. That was definitely going towards corporate. And I might one day in the future still head there. I have no idea. But if I look what I get to do by trying to solve this grand problem where a lot of people want to work together, I mean, I get to work with people with vision. I get to work with all these young entrepreneurs who are trying to change the world. I get to work with CEOs from big companies who really try to believe and want to believe in my idea. And as a person, this is, I really can't describe in words how good the past couple of months have been for me. And I know it sounds weird. Everybody looks at social problems as, you need to be a good person for that. And obviously you need to be a good person, but you need to be a good person in general, right? If you want to kickstart your future, try to do these things. And I have this belief that if we actually switch our mindset and see in challenging ourselves to take on the hardest problems of this world, try to become these better versions or even the best versions of ourselves, that we can lay a basis. And I think what matters are all the countless deeds of unknown people like you and me who lay the basis for the significant events that enter history. And if it's you and me that have to lay that basis, then obviously it starts with the choice that you and me make. And if it starts with the choice that you and me make, then it starts with the choice that you as an individual have to make the moment you walk out this door. And if it really does, and that's what I trying to say, is if it really does start with the choice you have to make, then it obviously has to start with you. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you at the break.